Hi, how's it going? I'm Marlena. Thanks for wandering by. So today I'm going to give you an updated list of Decan Walk resources. So for those of you that might be stumbling upon this for the first time, hi, I'm Marlena. I'm a poet and a tarot reader. And 2 years ago, I started and recorded my journey of learning the decans through a Decan walk. And I've gotten since then lots of questions from folks about what resources they need in order to do a Decan walk. So I had, throughout the course of those videos, recommended and showed lots of things that I was using, but I kind of wanted to put it all in one place because I know right now we're in mid-March and most folks start a Decan walk when the zodiacal year, starts, which is in Aries season, usually March 21st. You don't have to start then, but I know that a lot of folks are gearing up to start a Decan walk with, at the spring equinox, March 21st, with the beginning of Aries season. So I thought this would be a great time to kind of put everything together and give you a video including a lot of different resources, okay? So before I start listing, resources, free resources, books, decks, and things like that, I want to just briefly touch upon what are decans and what is a Decan walk, just in case you have no clue and you're just here and you're like, what is this woman saying? So decans are essentially, it's part of astrology, and astrology is much, much, much older than tarot. So we're talking about the way that ancient astrologers divided the sky into 36 sections, okay? So decans are three pieces of a zodiac sign. So 12 zodiac signs, you cut each one into three pieces, segments, and you get the 36 decans. Now, the decans, I mean, I'm not an astrologer and I'm not an expert on the history of astrology or decans, okay? What I know though is that over time, different cultures have used decans to measure time as part of, astrology, pieces of the sky, excuse me. And also the decans, those segments of time, 10 degrees of the sky or 10 calendar days, okay? Um, they were combined with, or it was, I don't know, integrated with deities, gods, goddesses, right? So spirits, or yeah, I mean, deity, right? Powerful beings that we're connected to. And we're talking from the Egyptians to Greeks to Romans and so on and so forth. And then fast forward, so I'm taking you kind of quick through the history. That's my understanding, okay? So this is an ancient astrological concept that's connected to the segments of the sky as well as time. But when the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who are that's the group that gave us Edward Arthur Waite and Aleister Crowley, who laid down, who are the creators of the most famous tarot decks that we know of, the Waite Smith and the Thoth Tarot. They laid down correspondences between astrology and tarot. And the decans come in through the minor cards. Okay. So the majors all do have either an elemental or an astrological correspondence, but the minor cards 2 through 10 are connected to specific decans, okay? Court cards and aces are in there as well. But anyway, so that's briefly what decans are. Like, and it was my desire, along with a lot of other people, to walk the wheel of the year And pay attention to the correspondences between those as you know, those decans, that astrology and the tarot. Okay, and so that's what a decan walk is. And I started mine in 2023, and I did a video series that is linked down below. um and I also have continued the practice, and I'm going to continue the practice again, although I'm not making a video for every 10 days, every single decan. But I'm continuing to measure time, and to pay attention to the correspondences between astrology and tarot. Okay, so that answers the what are decans and what is a decan walk, as you know, kind of briefly and succinctly as I possibly can. But if you want to know more, right? If you're getting ready for a decan walk, if you want to know more, the resources that I'm about to give you can give you, further insight into like the history, the astrology. If you want to get more into like the deity, and spirits that are connected to the decans, I have, sources for you, that do that as well. So yeah, so that's what are decans, what is a decan walk. But now I want to give you resources to help you along your decan walk. Now, again, you don't need to buy anything. You don't need to do any major study. Your decan walk is going to be your own, so do as you wish. But I just wanted to provide things that I used, or that I've heard of, or that I've, seen, that I know can make it a more valuable, beneficial like experience for you. So let's start out with free resources. Free. And I'm going to try to remember to put the visuals of websites, and things up here for you, so that you can see as well. So I have my notes with me, so if I'm looking down, that's why. Okay, so free resources to start out with. And I mean, these aren't in any particular order, but these are things that I really love. Okay. So, first of all, the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast. All right. It is free. The Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast, if you haven't heard of it, is T. Susan Chang, and MM Moline, who we're going to talk about more, because they are some major tarot, mentors and authors in my world, that really helped me understand decans, and have kind of further, inspired me to continue working with the decans. But the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast is a free podcast that has they deep dive into every single tarot card, all 78 tarot cards. But they talk specifically about the all the esoterics, but they specifically talk about the astrology of each card. So then you're getting the understanding of the decans when you listen to the podcast. They also did a series of all 7 classical planets, so that is important for your decan walk. And they also did all 12 zodiac signs. And did they do the elements as well? I think so. I think they've done, like a little series of elements of the planets, and also of the zodiac signs. So you can like kind of bip bop around. So for example, with the first decan, which is Mars in Aries. And that's, the Two of Wands. And that's where we start in March. Okay. So the Two of Wands, Mars and Aries, you can go listen to their podcast on the Two of Wands. You can also listen to the episode about Mars, and you can listen to the episode about Aries. And then those are things that I did off and on throughout my decan walk. So can't recommend Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast enough. So keeping on that, sort of train with T. Susan Chang. Okay, so we'll get to her book later, but I mean, I guess, her book 36 Secrets, right, is available essentially for free if you read T. Susan Chang's blog. So I'll have everything linked in the description box below, but this is free, right? So it's not, put together the way that the 36 Secrets book is, but a lot, if not most, of the material that makes up T. Susan Chang's book, 36 Secrets, is available on her blog. So if you just want a free resource and check in with the decans and read through T. Susan Chang's specific, experience learning and walking the decans, then go to her blog. It's free. So MM Maline's blog. So MM Maline is and T. Susan Chang are partners in the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast. They've written books together. I think at least one book. I'm not sure if there's more. They're both tarot authors, and MM Maline is also a deck creator. So we'll talk about her more too. I'm sure many of you have already heard these names because these are like, these are names to me in the tarot world. But anyway, MM Maline and T. Susan Chang, love them both. But MM Aline's blog also dives into the decans, and so I'll put a visual here. I think one of her most recent blog posts is talking about her most recent deck, the Telos Tarot, which we'll talk about as well. That is a specific, deck that she created, for the decans during specific astrological times. But in her blog, I'm not sure if she goes decan by decan and does all 36 of them the way that T. Susan Chang does, but I've read some of her blog and it's free, and it's really it's really fascinating. It's really good stuff. So you should check out Emma Maline's blog. Okay. Oh, I'm listing myself. Because I created an entire series of my first Decan walk, and I go through, every single Decan. The videos range from like 20 minutes to like 50 minutes long, depending on which Decan it is. I have the Decan Walk playlist of all my videos as well. But you can also find, if you just use the hashtag that I used when I did my Decan Walk, so Decan Walk, hashtag Decan Walk 2023, a lot of folks joined in with me and created their own videos. So if you look up that hashtag, you'll find a lot of other free resources along with mine to kind of help you along and your own deck and walk. So that's out there for free. Now, okay, in terms of like a resource for like an actual physical, Decan wheel, I guess I'll put up, literally I just Googled Decan wheel and there are so many, but I have a few that like one in particular that I like the most, that I have like saved on my phone. I think I had a printed version of it somewhere. But I just mostly look at it on my phone or my iPad, and it's this one. And I like it because it includes includes the decans, and it includes the court cards and the aces, and it also gives you the ruling planet of each zodiac sign. So when you are doing a Decan walk, having a Decan wheel isn't like, to see the references is, for me, an important piece, right? So that you can keep track of what it is that you're doing. You can keep track of it through like a book. The blogs will have, these things listed, not necessarily in a one place, fits all. So I like this Decan wheel the best, but there are others. There's one like this one. There's one like this. Some of them have more information than others. So I highly recommend that look up, find one that makes the most sense to you. And and use it. And then I also found there's Decan charts. So here's a Auntie Moon's Decan chart. Is so it's in chart form, not in wheel form. So if a list helps you follow the decans better, there's that's available to you. There's a couple of other websites, blogs that I have like seen. I haven't like dived into too deeply, but they're there and they've done, full Decan walks. So there's hermitsmirror.com. So I'll show you, I guess I'll scroll through a little bit to show you what that one looks like. And scttarot.com is another website that I found that has lots of resources, and I think their personal journey in doing a Decan walk. So I always find that, really fascinating. So those are the free resources that I know of, a quick bunch of them for you to use for your Decan walk. Highly recommend all of these things. Okay. So the books that I love, the books that I've used, I have a stack of books and I just honestly couldn't be bothered to pull all the books down. So I'm just gonna put a visual up of the cover on the screen here for you, and go through these. If you watch my Deck and Walk series, you'll see me using these specific books. I read from them, I quote from them, I analyze them, we definitely talk about them. So the first book that is like kind of like everyone's kind of key resource is 36 Secrets by T. Susan Chang. Okay. And I love this book. I love T. Susan Chang, and it was like kind of like the anchor in my Decan walk. So it was what, kind of kept me moving and kept me going. I did read most of it, but there are probably some decans where I didn't read like the full entry for the decan. And just remember though, with 36 Secrets, you are getting Susan's experience of the decans, and her like it covers the astrology, the esoteric. She even brings in the Kabbalah in there, which is tied to, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Tree of Life, the and astrology. So that those things are kind of interconnected. So I mean, it's kind of like, either the book or her blog can help keep you on pace, and that's for me, what I really enjoyed about it. Then I'd like to share with you probably my favorite book that helped me understand the correspondence between astrology and the tarot is the Tarot Handbook by Angelus Arian. So, or Arian, I'm not sure, Arian, I think. So Angelus Arian. So this is a book that is essentially it's a Thoth tarot guide. It's a breakdown of the 78 cards, but there's more stuff in there too. Explaining card by card, and but because it's the Thoth tarot, and because Angelus Arian is just like brilliant, it's really different than most things that I've read about the tarot, but it kind of homes in on the astrology in a very clear and succinct way. Her writing just makes sense to me. It was the way that I was able to put together the tarot with the astrology. So, if you don't already know, each Decan card, it puts together a major card with a minor card. So, like I said, the first one, Mars and Aries, we have Two of Wands. So we have a planet energy and a zodiac energy, and so that gives us the Two of Wands, right? And so there are several different, there are cards that relate to Mars and Aries, and then you have your Two of Wands. So like Angelus Arian's book really helped me put those puzzle pieces together in order to understand and form my own, opinions and feelings about that particular card, that particular decan, and so on. I can't recommend that book more for Decan walks, for tarot study, for Thoth tarot study, in particular. So yeah, the Tarot Handbook, hands down, was my favorite book, in the Decan Walk, in my Decan Walk studies. Another book that I really leaned on, kind of sort of towards the beginning, but not right at the beginning of my deck and walk, is the astrology volume of the Library of Esoterica. Now, this is, I mean, I guess you could say it's like a coffee table book, but not being familiar with astrology myself beyond, like a very, and I'm still really, really a very, beginner at astrology. Like my interest is where astrology and tarot line up, and not really much beyond that. But in any case, the Library of Esoterica, the astrology volume, has, beautiful artwork that represents the seven classical planets and beyond, all of the planets. And also all 12 of the zodiac signs. So, in my getting to know these specific things about the decans, I needed to learn more about the planets and the zodiac signs, and what, and the artwork really helped me get into it as well. So I definitely used that book often, especially when we would enter a new zodiac sign and I wanted to learn more about that particular zodiac sign through, what was written, and also through the visuals that were in that book. So that was really great. Another book slash deck, but it's a deck, but really it's the guidebook from this deck that I used to help me understand, again, the planets and the zodiac signs. And this deck is the Karma Cards by Monty Farber. I have a vintage version of it, but there is a like a mass market, version of it available. And I don't believe that the guidebook has changed. I wasn't using the deck. It's not the deck. It's that in the guidebook, there's a really great explanation, especially of the zodiac signs, that really made me understand them seasonally, especially for the northern hemisphere. So the way that Monty Farber described that time of year, and how that, correlates to the way that we view a person born under that sun sign, or just what that sun sign, that zodiac sign means. It just really made sense to me. It made like everything kind of fall into place as well. So I really, really love the Karma Cards guidebook as a resource. Another book that I used heavily during my deck and walk, and I still refer to, I've got all my reference books, in like a specific place. That's why I didn't want to drag them all down here. Was Tarot and Astrology by Corinne Kenner. Now, this is, out of all of these, it is probably the most palatable, like easy to read. Because T. Susan Chang is great, but she's coming from like a very esoteric, her esoteric knowledge, and talking about ancient texts like the Picatrix, and also in her book she talks about the Kabbalah, and Corinne Kenner talks about the Kabbalah as well in tarot and astrology, because those things it's so interconnected, with the way that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn has correspondences for the tarot. But Susan is, it's a little bit, I don't want to say this like there's anything wrong with it. It's a little bit more elevated, language in Susan's book. Whereas Corinne Kenner, it's a little bit easier to read. I guess it's just a little bit more, like it's just a little bit easier to digest. It doesn't feel too as heady necessarily as Susan Chang, And MM Moline even is headier. Like if you're reading MM Moline's blog, because MM Moline throws in like mythology, like all different kinds of stuff. So you got to be prepared when you're reading MM Moline's blog and Susan Chang. But I think Corinne Kenner is what I would recommend for somebody who's like really just needs kind of like, like foundational kind of understanding, a little bit. I don't want to say basic as if it's a bad thing, but just that kind of more basic way to understand it. Um, I mean, it is, it's very informative. It's a good book, but I feel like it's just easier to read. Okay. And it doesn't include like what Susan did, a personal like a personal journey through the decans. It's more of a, informational text. So tarot and astrology, that's a good one. Speaking of Susan Chang and MM Moline, I should have mentioned this before, but they have a book together that's called Tarot Deciphered, which I think is a great book for Decan Walk. I think it's a great book for studying tarot in general. I think it's a great book for doing comparisons between the Rider-Waite Smith and the Thoth Tarot. Um, Full of a lot of information. So if you are not a podcast person and aren't going to listen to their Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast, then I recommend Tarot Deciphered because it's really the companion to the podcast, It's really like, so if you listen to the podcast and then you want to kind of like, wait a minute, what was it that they said? Then I would go, and go to Tarot Decipher because it's essentially like it's essentially like a recap of what they discussed in each episode of the podcast. Um, and it has really good charts of the decans and tarot correspondences in the back. So I highly recommend Tarot Deciphered by Susan Chang and MM Moline. And then oh, I have to go grab this other one. Let me go grab it. Okay, so I had to go grab a couple of things, actually three things. To tell you about as well, because these are so all the books that I have mentioned so far, resources are really like references that are going to help you understand the astrology and the tarot as you walk the wheel of the year, paying attention to each decan and its correspondences. These next books, well, they're a little bit different than that. So, still talking about T. Susan Chang. T. Susan Chang wrote this book, Dreaming the Decans. Now, the difference between all of her other books and Dreaming the Decans is that this is a book of poetry. And so T. Susan Chang wrote a poem for each of the decans. There's also, yeah, so here we go. I'll show you for Aries 1. So there's an image that I think she used AI to help her create. And then she wrote a poem that is, they're rhyming couplets. Yeah, they're rhyming couplets, bringing together all of the energies of that particular decan. Now I have been using this book in my second decan walk to kind of like um open up the space and invite in that energy spirit of the decan, and I love poetry, so I have like a whole kind of ritual using this book, and kind of like opening up the 10 days, for the energy of that particular decan. Kind of along those same lines, I got a book that's another book of poetry, A Wheel of Small Gods, poetry by Brian Wilkins, and the art is by Brennan Reese. And these creators follow the decans. It's not in it's in a strange order, because it like goes from Cancer. I don't know, it's strange. So you'll have to like kind of go back and forth. But there, like I said at the beginning, the decans it's an ancient concept that has crossed many different ancient cultures, up through history, modern cultures. So there are a lot of different like mythological deity, God connection, God and goddess connections, spirits to each one of the decans. And so there's also a connection between like health and wellness and specific parts of the body that are connected to, the decans as well. And I know that that's an astrological correspondence. And lots of folks have, with with specific zodiac signs, and even more specifically with pieces of the zodiac sign, the decans. And so these are poems that are, for a specific decan, and then a specific deity, small god, right? Demigod, maybe, that goes along with it. And so I've used this on occasion. The poetry, it's cool, but it's not necessarily like my preferred type of poetry. So, but like you can see, like, Aquarius 2, fatty tissue of the legs, and Luxos. I don't know, that particular deity or small god, but that's a book if this kind of thing interests you. So I'll put a link for that down below. And so these two kind of, these are two kind of like the poetry books that where you can kind of work with the spirit deity, if that's an interesting part of the whole, experience of the Decan Walk, because it can also most definitely be tied to your, spirituality, and that kind of thing, and magic, and as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that too when we talk about decks, because I'm gonna show you some decks too that I recommend for Decan walking. But so two more things. First is another thing, not first, because I've mentioned like a zillion things already, is the Great Workbook. And I'm pretty sure that this is available right now. I think it goes in and out of print, but the Great Workbook is a fabulous companion for the Decan Walk. It has, this is a workbook for learning, working with tarot and the esoterics to learn astrology, Kabbalah, but it has, the first section is astrology of the tarot. And I'll show you, I've done a lot of it already, but like you learn like the astrological symbols. I have a video where I'm like filling out the decan wheel, but I want to show you, right? So here are the minor arcana and the decans. I filled this out, and it just helps you like create your own chart. And then it goes through the majors, right? So you can do, am I doing this very well? I'm not very good at this. The court cards as well. And then you can fill in your own deck and wheel. So I'll show you mine, because I filled in the whole thing. Oh, I have things falling out. So this is the Decan wheel, and I did mine in pencil. I might one day go back and like color code it and do things, but this is the Decan wheel, or even take it out of here and maybe like frame it, or have it somewhere more easily accessible to me. Yeah, because then in these fell out, but these are your tarot deck, your symbol references, which is good if you don't know your astrology and things like that. So the reference charts are great. I love the Great Workbook. My next like big ambition is to get into the Kabbalah section of this workbook. I've done a lot of work in here with the astrology and with specific tarot cards, as well. But like I did, let me show you. I can show you one of the pretty ones that I did. Right. So yeah, this is because I'm a Gemini. So I filled out, kind of borrowed exactly what the creator of this deck did. They have a Substack that I follow. And so this is Numinous Press. Sorry, Numinous Press, the Great Workbook by Numinous Press. And I filled that out. And then I filled out my decan. Let me see if I can go get to my decan, which is the Eight of Swords. So I filled out my decan. I think I filled out the three. No, I just did the Eight of Swords, which is my decan. I filled it out with some, with some pieces, and guidance definitely from Numinous Press. I'm not super artistic in that way. So yeah, highly, this is like coming apart because I've been messing with it so much. But the Great Workbook is another resource, or thing, fun, kind of, valuable thing to do to work on during a Decan walk. So I definitely use that off and on throughout my Decan walk. And then finally, in terms of like a workbook, it's actually a spread book I created. So if you watch my videos, I had you know that at the end of every one, I talk about a little bit in more detail in some than others, but a spread that I created based on my experience of learning that particular decan. I created a tarot spread for every single decan. And except for one, I took one off, which is the Four of Swords. um, is that Libra 3? Yeah. I didn't I abstained from creating a spread for a very specific reason for the Four of Swords decan. But so I have a tarot spread in my, so I guess I'll show you a visual of it as I'm talking about it. So it's the Decan Walk spread book. It's not anything fancy name. And it is a spread for every single decan except for one. And then there's also extra spreads at the end that relate to Decan Walk and astrology and things that I learned throughout my very first Decan Walk. So yeah, the Decan Walk spread book. It's my creation, and it's available for purchase on my Ko-fi shop, or Ko-fi. So I always have a link to it down below. So yeah, so we did the free resources, we did the books that I loved and used, and now we'll talk about the decks that I think make a Decan Walk easier and more enjoyable. All right, so let's talk about decks that I used during my Decan Walk and still continue to use, outside of Decan walks, but I love it for Decan. I love them for Decan practices. They just make things easier for different reasons. Let's start with Oracle decks, and I'll start with this one, which is the Picatrix Decans. So I've since lost the box. It's glossy, so it's gonna be hard to see. These are cards that are collaged, and there's straight up the Decan image from the ancient text, I believe it's a grimoire, the Picatrix. So these you can use alongside your tarot or oracle to set out for each decan. I didn't really use these that much. I still and I think when I get into the Emma Moline deck, I'll show you. I'm still like kind of iffy about the like Picatrix descriptions. Susan Chang talks about the Picatrix descriptions in her book and blog. So if it's something that you're interested in, this I found on Etsy. I think it's still available, and I'll leave a link to it down below. So it's your 36 cards, and you can follow along and have them out as part. I mean, it's pretty cool artwork. You can have them out for your Decan Walk. So then the next two decks are my preferred oracle decks that are astrology decks. And there's a ton of astrology decks out there. And I have had a couple that I've rehomed, but these are the ones that I enjoy and used. This one is the one I used the most on camera for my Decan Walk series, and it's the Star Codes Astro Oracle. I gotta tell you, I didn't really get into the guidebook with this one that much, but it has all the houses and all of the what is this? Debilitated. I think it has aspects too, but it has your zodiac signs and your planets plus some other. So I got distracted. The Star Codes Astro Oracle is the deck that I use the most. during my first Decan Walk, but I've since moved on to a different deck. But so it gives you, it has the zodiac signs, it has the planets, it has the houses, it has other astrological um components, things. I don't have the right word. But the ones that I paid my, that I paid attention to were the houses, or the signs, the planets, and the houses. Sometimes the houses, but mostly the signs and the planets. So, and I like it because of the keyword. So Gemini cross pollinate. So here's, the 10th house. Let me see if I can find a planet. Well, Uranus isn't one of the classical planets. See, so it has things like solar flares and the north node. Here's the sun. I just like the artwork. Venus. So Virgo. So it has, it has all of the things that you would need, plus then some. It's an astrology oracle. Leo. So yeah, so those are just some of the cards from the Astro Star Codes Astro Oracle. Like I said, I didn't really use the guidebook that much because the deck has keywords on each of the cards, and that was really my, my entry point into that particular planet or zodiac sign. So that was really helpful, and I really liked the way that it looked with any one of the decks that I was using, the tarot decks that I was using. So the other astrology deck that I love, love, love is the Arcana of Astrology by Claire Goodchild. Now, this deck, I'll show you the deck in a second, but this deck's guidebook, much like the Karma Cards by Monty Farber, this guidebook, I mean, little as it is my like astrology, like what I love. It helps me, I mean, so understand it does have moon phases, but it has, the planets and the signs, and I really just love the way that Claire talks about astrology. It's just clear, it just makes sense the way that she sees the planets. Like here's Pisces, and it's not a huge, sorry, this side, it's not a huge long entry, and it's like just enough information for me, during the Decan Walk when I was familiarizing myself with astrology. And I'm, like I said, I'm not an astrologer. I'm probably not going to get into astrology beyond the decans, or the tarot correspondences. So this is like perfect for me. So here are some of the cards that have your planets and your zodiac sign, and I love that these don't have keywords, so I use them in a bit of a different way. This helped me to kind of like form my own understanding of each of the signs and planets. I see my light is kind of getting the sun across my face as usual. But anyway, I love the artwork. Like I especially love the planets because it just feels like it's moving. And yeah, I mean, this is my go-to astrology deck. Now I've used it with, the decans. I use it whenever I'm really trying to key into astrology, specifically with the tarot. So those are like the oracle decks that I highly recommend for a Decan Walk. Now let's talk about tarot decks. So first and foremost are the two like main decks that I would recommend if you're doing a Decan Walk, and that's RWS or Thoth. And because those are the decks created by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, their particular tarot and astrology associations are the ones that I learned and that I go by in my Decan Walk. So there may be others out there, but those aren't the ones that that I've used in my studies. So the first deck, so RWS has astrology baked into the card. It's baked in there. But the zodiac and planetary signs don't appear on the deck themselves. So Reese Marin created the Divine Decan Tarot, and this was a deck that I used throughout my Decan Walk to go through the decans. So let me show you. So like, for example, here is a minor card, Venus and Aries, the Four of Wands. It has the decan. So Venus and Aries, it tells you that it's cardinal fire. It tells you that it is decan, the third decan of Aries. It gives you the title of the card as usual. It has the Rider-Waite-Smith depiction on it. It gives you the Thoth title or the Hermetic title. Perfected work. Yeah, perfected work is the Hermetic title, because on Thoth, its completion is the Four of Wands. And then it also gives you, whoops, I did it backwards. It gives you the dates. And these are, the dates can vary depending on what decan wheel chart you're looking at. But this was the one that I put into like my calendar and is the one I use and probably will use forever and ever. It changes slightly, but I just I need a fixed date. That's how I roll. But so you can see all of the minor cards are like that. And then it does have, do I have a major that I can show you? Ba, ba, ba. Well, it has, it has the court cards so, as well. So it tells you the relationship between the court cards and the decans. So this is the Queen of Wands. Aries, Cardinal Fire, goes from decan 3 Pisces to Aries, decans 1 and 2. So this is going to be your first court card when you start out. And it runs from March 21st to April 20th. And it is, so it is Aries. I am, and it's the first house. I didn't use these as much. Let me find, I need to find a major card. Where is a major card? Aha. Well, that one doesn't really, but I can show you. Okay, let's use let's use Justice, okay? So Justice is Libra, associated with Libra, okay? So, and it'll tell you as well the seventh house. Libra is the seventh house, and it's also cardinal air. So the Divine Decan Tarot, I'm pretty sure it's still available. I'll leave links down below. Reese kindly sent me a copy when I was starting my Decan Walk 2 years ago now. That's so crazy to me. So that is a great resource because it has all of the information that you would need and not have to like refer back to, the chart or the wheel or whatever, so that you can do your Decan Walk. So highly recommend the Divine Decan Tarot. Used it a lot as a great reference. And then also the Thoth Tarot. So this is, I have different copies of the Thoth, but this is the what is this? This is called the small one. I have the large one that I have trimmed. But so I can show you, but let me grab a minor card. Here we go, because this will be your first card in a Decan Walk. So if you're starting with Aries 1, this is the Two of Wands. So the reason why the Thoth Tarot is one of the ones that I recommend is because the astrology symbols are on the card, okay? Many of you already know this, but you have Mars in Aries, and so it has the astrology symbols directly on the card as well as on the major card. So we have the Emperor, and you can see that that's the that's the Hebrew letter, and then here is Aries on directly on the card, right? And so you have Sagittarius for the art card, Temperance. And so on and so forth. You guys have seen, the Thoth Tarot before, but so you can see that this is Jupiter in Capricorn, for the two of, is that Jupiter? Yeah, Jupiter. Jupiter in Capricorn for the two of discs or change. So you see Capricorn down there. Okay, I hope you can see it. Yeah, and then like, Capricorn on your devil card. and so on and so forth. So that's why the Thoth Tarot is one that I recommend, or any Thoth inspired deck that has the astrology, directly on the card. So you can always see you've got Mars in Capricorn for the Three of Discs. Okay. So it's right there for you. And that's why it's, a good deck to use. Maybe make things easier when you're doing a Decan Walk. So Divine Decan Tarot, Thoth Tarot, and then we have MM Maline's deck. So the Rosetta Tarot and the Tabula Mundi. For the same reason as the Thoth Tarot, I recommend these, well, because of her guidebook as well, but also because MM Maline has the decans on the card. So you have Mars in Pisces, which is the 10 of Cups, right? So it has, and on your major cards, so here we have the Hermit, which is Virgo. So it has the astrology directly on the card. And the same thing for the Tabula Mundi. I have the medium version. I want the bigger version of this one too. It also has, oh, and I have the Decan cards. You can get a set of Decan cards, like the Decans of Aries. So it marries them all together. Decans of Taurus. I'm going to be using these this year as well. It has all the, the Decan cards. So it like merges all three Decans of Aries into, like, with the imagery from those three cards into one, which I think is just beautiful. But on the cards themselves, again, you have your astrology right on the card. Mars in Scorpio for the Five of Cups. So that's why, it makes this deck really special also, because she specifically took the majors, like whatever it may be, the moon and the zodiac sign, and merged the imagery into the Decan card itself, into the minor card itself. So the moon is Pisces, so Two of Cups, we have Venus in Cancer, and so on and so forth. So Emma Maline's decks, and I highly recommend that if you don't purchase the guidebook separately, that you get the app from Fool's Dog. I'll leave links to that below so that you can get the guidebooks for her decks, because they are chock full of information. And like I said, Emma Maline tends to be a little bit heady, very esoteric, brings in a lot of like mythology, like across different mythologies, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, all kinds of stuff. But it's fun, it's fun to dig into. But these decks are helpful, like I said, because they have the astrology directly on the card. Now, the last deck of MM Aline's that I'm going to talk about just briefly, because this is the deck that I'm going to personally be using for my Decan Walk now, starting in March of 2025. This is a very special deck created by MM Maline. Each card was painted during the specific time of that decan, and the imagery, from my understanding, I believe it incorporates the Picatrix, as well as other places where the Decan imagery is discussed, like from the Picatrix, but I think from other bits and pieces of mythology, she has it in there. But of course, so here's where we would start, right? So Aries 1 is the Two of Wands. We have Mars and Aries, and we have this particular description or image that may come from the Picatrix. And then, yeah, and so I think I already pulled out the first, yeah. So there's the Emperor, which is Aries, and then you have the Tower for Mars and Aries, and then we have our court card, which is the Queen of Wands. So that's, one of our court cards. So the Queen of Wands covers Pisces and Aries. And then, but the Ace of Discs also falls into that first decan, and so does the Princess of Discs. So if you look at the Decan wheel, you'll see kind of where things overlap. And I'm going to be using this as the cards that I'm putting out onto my Decan like altar, which is essentially my coffee table. And then I will also be using this deck for readings, because this time um I'm going to use my Decan spreads, tarot spreads that I created for each Decan. Now that I've had a little bit of time like removed from them, I feel like I can work with them for myself, because when I created them, I was really thinking of like, them for other people, and it was hard to kind of use them for myself. And now I'll be able to use them for myself, and I will be posting some videos of myself, doing my own, Decan tarot spreads. So look for those, but I won't be doing every 10 days. I can't do that. So those are some of the tarot decks. And like I said, the Telos Tarot 777. I'm going to link everything down below, but this is going to be my main deck that I'm using this year. So a few more decks that I recommend because they have the astrology on them. So I want to recommend some indie and mass market decks for you. So another deck that I really, really love is the Eighth House Tarot. This is an indie deck, an astrological tarot deck. Love this deck because it has the astrological correspondences directly on the card. So we have Jupiter in Capricorn, the Two of Earth, and it goes by the elements, right? So we've got Mars in Scorpio. I'm showing a lot of the same ones. Isn't that funny? Mars in Scorpio, the Five of Water. We have Mercury in Taurus. So it has your decans on there. And then your major cards, it has the planet or zodiac sign or element that it corresponds to. So the High Priestess is the moon. Okay. Venus in Aquarius. So then I'll show you, the star is Aquarius, and so on. Okay. The court cards, it doesn't have the decan. It has the elemental association for the court card. So Page of Fire is fire of earth. And the Page of Earth is earth of earth. So that's a little bit different. All the court cards have this green border, this dark green border, whereas all the minor cards have this pink border. And then the majors have this kind of like neon green, yellow. Whoops, I have you upside down. So right, so Saturn for the world card. So I used this a lot. It's more RWS inspired when you take a look at the imagery. It's collage, it's cool, it's funky. It's, I really enjoyed the Eighth House Tarot. So recommend that deck. Another deck that I recommend for for a Decan Walk, because it has the decans on the card, is the Hermetic Tarot. It can get a little bit confusing though, so proceed with with caution, I guess, because on the cards of the Hermetic Tarot, it has a lot of other things too. But what I really love are the major cards, because it has the majors and the minors have the Hermetic title, obviously, because it's the Hermetic Tarot on the card. So the Lord of the Forces of Life, the Wheel of Fortune. You have to say those like that, right? The Lovers is the children of the voice divine. And then you have your minor cards. It does have your Decan astrology on there. So you have Sun in Gemini, okay, for the Ten of Swords. I'm so bad at this. The Lord of Ruin. But it has, it sometimes have other astrological symbols on the card, so it might get a little bit confusing. Well, this one doesn't. The Nine of Swords, Mars in Gemini, the Lord of Despair and Cruelty. I have to read it like that. The Three of Cups is Venus in Cancer. So you see it up here, Venus, Cancer. The Lord of Abundance. Strength, Fortitude, the Daughter of the Flaming Sword. Anyway, so the Hermetic Tarot is an awesome deck, and the little white book is really good. It's really worth it to get it. It's mass market. It's a cool black and white deck. Yeah, I dig it. I dig it. So yeah, Jupiter in Capricorn, the Lord of harmonious change. So that's the Hermetic Tarot, another. And then we have another deck that has the decans on it, and it's actually like it's a decan deck. The Tarot of the Stars Eternal, Liber T Tarot of Stars Eternal. And this has it has your correspondences on the deck as well. So we have, like, for the Magus, you have Mercury up at the top, and it also has the Hebrew letter. Yeah. So here we have Two of Wands is what I'm going with a lot, just because it's like, a good starting point. It is the starting point for many people. So you have Mars and Aries, the Two of Wands. So you see how this has Thoth influence, but it also is influenced by some different descriptions of the imagery of the decans, like from the Picatrix and other materials that I'm not necessarily sure what they are. Ancient texts, grimoires, magical, things. So you have the Sun in Aries. So this is all in order. Let me show you some from the cups. So you have Mercury in Cancer, which is the Three of Cups. And you have Moon in Cancer, the Four of Cups. So you see how these depictions are, you've got kind of like your thothy thing going on, but you also have some other stuff happening, which is really, really interesting. And the guidebook is, so the little white book here doesn't really tell you what's going on in these depictions. So you, yeah. So, and here's what a court card looks like. Here's the ace, very thothy. But when you get into the minors, it's got, this whole other scene happening here, which I think is very cool. This is another deck that's on my 25 and 25 to use this year. So yeah, the Liber T, a mass market deck, really cool. Would like to use it as well this year, in hopefully maybe in connection with my, with decans, but maybe, on its own as well. So those decks, all those tarot decks I recommend, because either all of them or some of them have the actual astrology, like, on printed on the card, the symbols or the words that let you know what the astrology correspondence is. And these are all ones that correspond to the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, the way that they, connected tarot and astrology. And then the last two decks I'm going to show you, I'm showing you them because they have the guidebook or the deck itself. It's hard to find the astrology on one of them, but inside the guidebook, it's got the astrology in it, and it very much, very much works. So the Tarot of Vampyres. I know that this is out of print now, but I know a lot of you have it because this deck has been around for a while. So it most definitely has the astrology in the guidebook. So for example, let me pull up the Two of Wands, which is the Two of Scepters in this deck. And so it has your, Mars and Aries, and it tells you your Kabbalah as well. So it's there, it's in the guidebook, and you can find those symbols on the cards themselves, but you have to kind of look for them. Oh, I have mine in a cool little Krista bag. But so I'm sure many of you have seen the Tarot of Vampyres. I know it's out of print, so I won't spend too much time on it. But yeah, if you go looking into the cards themselves, you can find the astrological glyphs for the planet and the and the planet and the sign. And then also in the majors, you have, representations of the zodiac sign. Like, for example, Aries is our emperor. So you have the very clearly the Aries glyph on that necklace that he's wearing. So and the guidebook is good because it has the astrology listed in it, and it gets into what that means, what the astrology means for the cards meaning overall. Another deck that does this, and I really enjoy that it does this as well, it doesn't have the astrology on the card, but it has the astrology listed in the guidebook. And this is the Goddess of Love Tarot. So I can show you, for example, so like with your major cards, death, it tells you your astrological correspondence is Scorpio, and it does the same thing for your minor cards. So you have the Two of Cups, and your astrological correspondence is Venus in Cancer. So while I'll show you a couple of cards, so while it doesn't have the, the astrological glyph directly on the card, it does have it in the guidebook. And I know there's other decks that must do this, but I'm not sure. So here's a couple of, if you've never seen, I mean, this deck has been very popular. It's one of my favorites. But you see, like, here's the Six of Swords. It does not have astrology on the card itself, the like glyphs, astrological glyphs, but you can find that in the guidebook. Anyway, I was saying this deck is one of my favorites, and it's been around for a little bit now and very popular, by Gabby Herstick, art by Snakes for Hair. So beautiful deck. Absolutely love it. Definitely love the guidebook. So if these are decks that you happen to already have, then, great. But you don't really, if you have any deck that not necessarily has the astrological correspondences right directly on the card, that's okay. Like, you can always, use your chart, use your wheel, look it up and that kind of thing. But I've enjoyed having this because I like having, when I'm doing readings outside of the Decan Walk, I like to have like I'm trying to memorize them all. I'm pretty good about some, but it doesn't always come straight to mind. But having that right there on there, Venus in Cancer, then it's right there in front of you. So it's good for doing, readings outside of just like putting, cards up for your Decan Walk. Okay. Oh my gosh. I'm out of breath now. I need a sip. I need another sip. I've been taking sips in between. Okay. So I think I've done it. I think I've laid the groundwork for you, for resources for a Decan Walk. I kind of wanted to kind of have it all in one place to show you that, there's free resources available. There's cool books out there. There's decks that I prefer to use and why I prefer to use them. I definitely wanted to make sure to give you free resources because I don't think you have to like invest, a ton into doing this Decan Walk. You really don't. But if you want to, get some stuff, or, accumulate over time, then, these are the things that I like and recommend. So that's it. I'm going to stop rambling on. I hope that that helped you out, and I hope that you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. Check out the description box for all of these resources linked for you, and my Decan Walk, my video series playlist is always down below. A link to my spread book is always down below as well, and in my bio and everything. So if you're interested in that, that would be awesome. Let me know what your plans are if you're going to do this Decan Walk starting in Aries season. And I'm looking forward to seeing Decan related videos from from folks that are doing this for the first time. That's awesome. Anyway, that's it. I said I was gonna stop rambling and I haven't. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you all have a beautiful, wonderful Decan Walk and a beautiful, wonderful day. Bye.